Hi everybody, on this third day of July, 3 July 2019. This is a little different video. And usually I kind of rehearse what I'm going to say when I'm doing a knife video, and here I'm not quite sure where this is going to go or how it's anyway. I didn't rehearse this, but I'm showing not two new knives. I'm showing two knives that I made 11 years ago. In 2008, I got my journeyman smith certification in the American Bladesmith Society. And when I did, and I got back home to celebrate that, I made myself two knives. The first knife, this video really isn't about this, but it's about this knife, this Stag Hunter here. But when I got ready to do this video, I remember, wait a minute, I made two knives when I did that. This is the first knife I made with my journeyman smith when I got my journeyman smith certification. It's an African Blackwood Hunter, you know, kind of sculpted handle. I did mother of pearl inlay on it, and I did this quite a bit. Of course, you know, you can see the taper, the sculpting of the hand heel as well. I did this facet that goes around the handle. There's a facet that comes around here, goes around the handle, and that facet then continues onto the guard. Damn, I did a good job on that, didn't I? Anyway, this is the first knife ever to get my JS stamp, and this literally lives in an old antique oak secretary. Hardly ever sees the light of day. I don't remember the last time I pulled it out of the sheath. It even got some rust on it. What do you know? So this video is more about this knife, but I wanted to show that I had made two separately unique knives. This is a Stag Hunter that I made for myself. It was never meant to really see the light of day. It was never meant to represent Anderson Forge. It was never meant to be sold at, you know, a ooh la la custom knife price. Nothing. It was just supposed to be my knife and was never supposed to go anywhere. Over the years, I had let pictures of this thing slip out here and there, and anyway, I've got a gentleman on my customer list who had seen this knife some years ago, and this video is as much for him as it is for anything else, because here's the deal. Every year he'd send me an email, I'd like to buy that knife, I'd like to have that knife, would you let it go, would you be willing to sell it? And this has been going on for 4, 5, or 6 years. I'm not really sure. Well, this year it dawned on me. Now, I've dressed deer with this, I've dressed turkey. It has been on my belt on canoe trips, and I thought, and just when I was just about to do this video, I remembered when I turned 60 5 years ago, I built myself a beautiful cedar strip canoe, and after about a year I sold it, and people freaked out. Why would you sell that? And well, it went to a guy who collected. I was moving, and where I was going, I wasn't going to have the chance to do that much canoeing. So it's hard to canoe in a cornfield, right? So when I left where I was, I sold it to a guy who collected cedar strip canoes. He had what they call a stable. So I knew that it was going to a good home. Well, this guy's been after me to buy this knife for a handful of years. And I decided, you know, I've used it. I made it for myself. I carried it. I got good use out of it, and he has to take this on knowing full well that it was never meant as one of those ooh la la fancy knives. This was my personal knife that I never meant to sell. Oddly enough, I even did something on this. I stamped my this is intentional, I stamped my JS on the obverse side, and I stamped my name on the reverse side, which is just reverse of what it normally is. This has a crested spine. I've done I've done quite a bit of these. This is a crested spine, and the hardware on here, which is, you know, 416 stainless, is all just machine finish. I didn't do any refinement. One of the things I intentionally tried to do was not touch the Stag whatsoever to shape it to the fittings. So literally you can see I did no shaping of the Stag. I fitted the guard right to the Stag. I didn't do any reduction to make anything work. So that's how this thing was built, machine finish. And one of the key points of doing this is once I let this out of my hand, I can't ever do this video again. Of course, I don't know, this guy might get it and say he doesn't want it and send it back to me. But I'd made a lot of Stag bowies and fighters and hunters in the day when you could get a piece of Stag like this for 25 bucks. Now it's 125 if you can find it. So I did something different on this Stag knife, and I'm going to show that so that there's, when I did this assembly, and the other one's a takedown too, because I've been doing this stuff for 20 years, the takedown assembly. When I did this assembly, I had never seen anybody else do it that way. Now there's been a couple guys who I've seen do videos on making Stag takedown knives, which is a little spooky to some people, because sometimes once you wallow out the core on a piece of Stag, your walls are thin, so they're building them up with epoxy and stuff, and that's all fine and good. But I did this 11 years ago before I had seen anybody, and I'm not saying I was the first one, but it uncommon. How about that? So what I just got a text message I really need to check. Carl, your adjustment is important. Please call us to schedule. Okay. All right. So this is just a socket head cap screw that's it's sticking out a simple 416 butt cap, right? Now I'm going to take this off. But this does not go down, to the tang. This is pinned, like a lot of my stuff is pinned. And this one's pretty short, but it's only sticking up out of the handle there about 40 thousandths. And now keep in mind, I made this thing 11 years ago. I don't know why I've got two holes down here and why I'm not using that one. I just really don't understand that. I don't remember, but it doesn't matter, because put it on there and see, it can't turn, right? But in here is what's holding this knife together. I mean, I could go to work with this thing just like this, because this butt cap down here and this thing are just a cover. So anyway, here's the deal. I'm going to see that this is a slotted affair. I'm going to unscrew it, and it's threaded, which is what this socket head's cap screw is sitting down in. If I take this off, take this out of there, here's that nut, here's that finial, but in there is a piece of steel with a hole in it, and I'm just going to turn this upside down and that thing will fall right out into my hand. Here it is. What I did was I wallowed out all around the solid core and created a ledge, and this thing sits on that ledge, and then the finial goes like that. So anyway, because all you got to do is this comes right apart. Here's our takedown affair. Correct? Correct. Slide the guard on. I mean, it's a zero tolerance fit. I did a good job on that. Pin in the guard, just sitting there floating, and boom, there. Our knife is together. Now this is for the guy I'm shipping this to. One side of this thing is painted black. The other side is not. The black side goes up. you're going to see a little notch that I ground right into the corner of that thing. Well, if you're looking at here's the guard. If you're looking at this thing like this, and this being 12 o'clock, and this being 6 o'clock, that notch goes in that opening. The part with that notch stays at 6 o'clock. It makes a difference. Don't ask me how I know that, but it does. Because once you tighten it up, that notch now is down there. I don't know if you can see that, but it's at 6 o'clock. Because of how this flat thing fits in the corners and so forth. Then the finial goes in. You got to find that threaded tang. You really need to make sure somehow, some way, that notch in that flat piece of steel stays at 6 o'clock. I'm pushing against this finial to kind of, the pressure is going to hold that piece of flat steel down there at 6 o'clock. It's important. It has to stay there. And then I tighten this thing up. That's pretty good. I got that pretty tight. We're going to set our knife on there. Somebody's coming in here in a car right behind me, and I don't know who it is. And then I tighten that up, and that's a done deal. And this is that knife, okay? So that's how this thing works, and that's the assembly that I used, you know, 11 years ago. So anyhow, I'm about to let this thing go, and it's getting sent off to a guy, and I wish him luck with it, and I hope it finds a good home. So thanks for indulging me.